Vice President-elect Kamala Harris calling out, quote, two systems of justice in respect to how authorities dealt with rioters in the Capitol Wednesday versus, quote, peaceful protesters last summer. Let's debate that with co-chair of Project 21, Horace Cooper, former Washington, D.C. police detective Ted Williams, and Washington Post columnist Mark Thiessen. Welcome to all of you gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good to be with you.
Okay, so let's start there. Vice President-elect saying basically that there are two different systems, two different tiers of justice. Julio Rosas, we had on the show last night, he's been out in a lot of these protests from Portland to D.C. for the last several months. He said this: as someone who has covered many of the riots last year, I can say this narrative is simply false. Tear gas, pepper balls, pepper spray, and flashbangs were all used yesterday, just as they were used on rioters in 2020. And Horace, unfortunately, there was a death also at the hands of a Capitol Police officer. That we'll find more about that case as it plays out. But, you know, Julio says there was tough treatment of these guys yesterday.
Well, I'm really disappointed that if we're going to have this call for unity, that we should all focus on the thing that I think we could agree upon. I say to the Vice President and the President-elect, welcome to the law and order side of things. I've advocated all this summer and even prior to that, that we hold people accountable who use the pretext of protest for lawlessness, for engaging in rioting. But at no point should we give a free pass to people on the basis of their race, and it appears that that's the signal that is being sent now and the signal that was being sent then.
Well, people want consistency from their leaders, from their media. If you're going to call things out on one side, to be consistent and call out the same behavior on the other side of the ideological spectrum. Here's a bit, though, of the media over last summer describing some of what we saw play out.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Largely peaceful demonstrations in the face of law enforcement. It wasn't until night fell that things began to get a little bit more contentious.
This is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly.
And Ted, listen, some of those have become memes for the ages when there are burning down buildings behind you, when police precincts have been overrun, when people are actually being killed and blocks of a city are being occupied for weeks at a time. What about the consistency? If you think yesterday was terrible, and it was last summer not some egregious behavior?
Well, certainly last summer was very egregious behavior. But I got to tell you, Shannon, what happened yesterday has not happened in the streets of Portland or anywhere else, and that is an attack on the People's House. There is a clear distinction between attacking a police station in Portland, Oregon, or elsewhere, and attacking the United States Capitol. And as a result of that, sadly, we saw a woman was killed, many injured, and this just should not have happened in this country as far as I can see.
Yeah, I think we all are in agreement about that. But there were some today in the media who were, or yesterday, who were talking about the people who showed up. And again, there were a lot of good people who showed up here yesterday to march, to talk about how much they love this country and this particular president. There was a section of them that went into criminal behavior that cannot be excused in any way. But we do, as we did last summer with the riots that were going on, realize there were people who were trying to march for an important message and for justice who were not involved with the looting and the burning down and all that. So we have to make that distinction. But here is how an anchor on another station, on another network, wants to refer to the people who were here in Washington yesterday.
And they're going to go back, you know, to the Olive Garden and to the Holiday Inn that they're staying at and the Garden Marriott, and they're going to have some drinks, and they're going to talk about the great day that they had in Washington, and they really did something and stand up for something.
And Mark, why the sort of sneer at Holiday Inn and at Olive Garden? I mean, this is the very thing that those people are so upset about, being disregarded and talked down to. I can't imagine that that's going to help the situation at all. And why do some in the media not immediately get that's probably not a good place to go?
Yeah, that's an embarrassing moment for Anderson Cooper. And the reality is that there are millions of people who go to Olive Garden and stay at Holiday Inns every day who were watching the riots yesterday and the attack on the Capitol with horror. And it's just elitist classism of the elite liberal media to say something like that. And, going back to, Biden and Harris, the reason Joe Biden was elected president is because he promised to unite the country and end the division. And here is an opportunity, actually, to unite the country, because we now have a situation where conservatives and Democrats and liberals and Republicans are all condemning what happened in the United States Capitol. There's no division in terms of how we see it, and quite frankly, every respectable conservative I know has placed the blame for what happened at Donald Trump's feet, for inciting this violence, for calling this mob into Washington and sending them to the Capitol. And so, why would Joe Biden now turn around and try and inject race and division into this moment? This should actually be a moment where we're saying we're finally united on law and order and on condemning violence and condemning these things. And it just makes it's completely contrary to what Joe Biden campaigned on. And if this is how he's going to start his presidency, it's going to be a very divisive presidency.
Horace, a quick question to you. Kristen Clark has been tapped to be nominated as Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division. She wrote under the headline, "I prosecuted police killings, defund the police, but be strategic." She talked about advocating for defunding some police operations that have made African Americans more vulnerable to police violence and contributed to mass incarceration. Horace, that is apparently the the Biden-Harris pick for that particular post, which is an important one. Quick thought from you.
Well, it's actually quite disturbing. I will tell you, throughout the summer and heading into the elections, survey after survey reported that Black Americans said, we want more law enforcement, not less. We want more responsiveness in our communities, not less. And yet, if we'd had a media working aggressively to make sure the American people hear the kinds of information that they need, they would have pressed the Biden-Harris ticket into answering the question where they're going to come down. Putting a person like this is sending us in the very direction that led to the 2016 election, where Americans, black, white, or brown, felt like there was an elite versus the rest of us mindset. And that mindset wasn't a popular thing during the Obama administration, and apparently no lessons have been learned. The White House got attacked this summer. Courthouses were attacked this summer. All of these places. And when I hear the mayor of D.C. tell me she's for law and order now, I say, welcome to the party, but where were you when you were sending this message that it wasn't important? And where are you now, Mr. President-elect, when you're nominating people like this that send the message that our communities, particularly black ones, are going to be made vulnerable once again?
Okay, listen, it's going to be Horace Cooper and Mayor Bowser having lunch. We'll check on that. Horace, Ted, Mark, thank you all very much.
Thank you.